welcome everybody. We are here for the special class on budget that was laid down on the 1st of the February of the 1st of this month. So there were 1,000 things that were said in the budget. What is important for us that I have tried to explain in this presentation or this class. The rest you can look up into the document, but the most important thing about budget is the terminology. You need to understand what kind of terminology that the budget uses, and that terminology has been reflected into our exams also time and again, है ना? So the class mainly consists of three things. The first thing is what is budget, the second thing is budget, and the budget means the whole document. We will be analyzing the whole document from our exam point of view. ठीक है, तो बहुत सारी चीजें we will be skipping कि we will not be going into the detail of every allotment या every demand for grant that has been granted. ठीक है, but we will be focusing on the major areas like health and well-being, infrastructure. ठीक है, what is the fiscal position of the country right now, what are the taxation provisions that have been introduced, most importantly the most important taxation provisions that are important from our exam point of view. ठीक है, तो budget basically comprises of article 112. okay, the most important article around the budget is article 112. Article 112 says that the president shall cause the budget to be laid down in each of the houses. ठीक है, but the president shall cause the budget to be laid down in each of the houses. ठीक है, पहला तो स्टेटमेंट ये है. दूसरा स्टेटमेंट आर्टिकल 112 का है कि the expenditure that is being made from the consolidated fund of India shall be shown separately from the expenditure that is being charged upon the consolidated fund of India. So what is the difference between the expenditure being made from the consolidated fund and expenditure being charged? ठीक है, so the expenditure that is being charged upon the consolidated fund of India is not put to vote. Okay, it cannot be put to vote in any of the houses, in either of the houses. ठीक है, but that expenditure can certainly be discussed in the houses, and that expenditure primarily consists of the payment, the salaries and allowances of president, the salaries and allowances of judges of the Supreme Court, and pensions of the judges of the Supreme Court, the salary of the Speaker of the Lok Sabha, the salary of the Vice President, and all these salaries and expenditures, the interest that government pays, that is also not put to the vote. ठीक है, government loans लेती है, and उन loans का जो interest payment government करती है, that is not put to the vote, it is discussed. ठीक है, are the expenditures that are basically charged upon the consolidated fund of India are those expenditure which are like of absolute necessity. ठीक है, they cannot be deferred, they must be paid. ठीक है, तो the second part, article 112 says that the expenditure that is being charged upon the revenue side, ठीक है, या the revenue expenditure has to be shown different from the other expenditures. ठीक है, तो यहाँ पे ये differentiation क्यों है, उसके पीछे एक reason है कि जो revenue expenditure होता है वो होता है गवर्नमेंट की functioning और गवर्नमेंट का administrative और day to day working और इन चीज़ों के लिए. ठीक है, like salaries, गवर्नमेंट बहुत सारे डिपार्टमेंट्स रन करती है, गवर्नमेंट रन्स अ लॉट ऑफ मिनिस्ट्रीज, डिपार्टमेंट्स एंड ऑटोनमस बॉडीज एंड तमाम चीज़ें हैं ना, तो उनका जो खर्चा है that is considered as revenue expenditure. ठीक है, तो that has to be necessarily shown different. ठीक है, because that puts a limit on the government's expenditure and that brings about a transparency into how much of the funds the government is consuming, and because revenue expenditure does not generate any capital asset. ठीक है, तो अगर कोई गवर्नमेंट बहुत ज़्यादा रेवेन्यू एक्सपेंडिचर कर रही है तो हायर रेवेन्यू डेफिसिट्स होते हैं, जिसकी वजह से ऑब्वियसली फिस्कल डेफिसिट भी हाई होगा, और हायर रेवेन्यू डेफिसिट इज नॉट गोइंग टू जनरेट एनी काइंड ऑफ कैपिटल एसेट, दैट इज अ ड्रॉबैक. ठीक है, तो रेवेन्यू डेफिसिट हैज टू बी ब्रॉट डाउन, Obviously our aim is to bring down the fiscal deficit as well, but our primary target is targeting the revenue deficit. अब revenue deficit को कम करने के लिए गवर्नमेंट बहुत सारे जैसे मिनिमम गवर्नमेंट और मैक्सिमम गवर्नेंस, reducing the size of employees that government has, है ना, rationalization of subsidies, all these come under the revenue expenditure. तो revenue expenditure को गवर्नमेंट कम करना चाहती है, ठीक है. आर्टिकल 112. नाउ बजट इज प्रिपेयर्ड बाय, अच्छा बजट से 2 दिन पहले इकोनॉमिक सर्वे वाज आल्सो लेड डाउन, ठीक है. तो इकोनॉमिक सर्वे इज प्रिपेयर्ड बाय एंड बजट इज बोथ आर प्रिपेयर्ड बाय डिपार्टमेंट ऑफ इकोनॉमिक अफेयर्स इन मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ फाइनेंस, ठीक है. डिपार्टमेंट ऑफ इकोनॉमिक अफेयर्स अंडर द मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ फाइनेंस, ठीक है. बट budget is prepared by budget division, that is a division under the Ministry of Finance under the Department of Economic Affairs, and what economic survey is prepared by Department of Economic Affairs Economic Survey Division, ठीक है. तो ये एक minor information थी that is very important, and these informations are like UPSC is very attracted towards this kind of information and they regularly ask such kind of things in their exams, ठीक है. तो बजट का सेटअप कैसा होता है, आई हैव ट्राइड टू एक्सप्लेन है. बजट हैज 2 पोर्शंस, रेवेन्यू बजट एंड कैपिटल बजट, ठीक है. रेवेन्यू बजट आई एक्सप्लेन्ड. रेवेन्यू बजट दैट मीन्स that does not, any kind of revenue expenditure that does not amount to creation of a capital asset, that will be considered revenue expenditure. Similarly, any kind of revenue that is not accruing from, there are certain kind of definitions we will go through right now, ठीक है. तो generalization of all these things will be not a good thing to do, but revenue budget and capital budget, the budget has been divided into 2 parts. Similarly, revenue budget had receipts and expenditures. Similarly, capital budget has receipts and expenditure. टैक्स रेवेन्यू, ठीक है. टैक्स रेवेन्यू यानी जो भी इनडायरेक्ट टैक्स रेवेन्यू में किस प्रकार का रेवेन्यू होगा, इनडायरेक्ट टैक्स रेवेन्यू और डायरेक्ट टैक्स रेवेन्यू. तो डायरेक्ट टैक्स रेवेन्यू मतलब गवर्नमेंट जो डायरेक्ट टैक्सेस इंपोज करती है, लाइक इनकम टैक्स, ठीक है, कस्टम्स ड्यूटी, ऑल दीज डायरेक्ट टैक्सेस. एंड इनडायरेक्ट टैक्सेस आर लाइक सेल्स टैक्स इज अ काइंड ऑफ इनडायरेक्ट टैक्स, ठीक है. तो वो सारे रेवेन्यू टैक्स रेवेन्यू में आ जाएंगे. नॉन टैक्स रेवेन्यू में बहुत सारा लाइक सेल ऑफ एसेट, अगर गवर्नमेंट इज सेलिंग ट्राइंग टू सेल सम ऑफ इट्स एसेट्स, तो दैट विल बी द रेवेन्यू दैट इज जनरेटेड फ्रॉम दैट इज कॉल्ड नॉन टैक्स रेवेन्यू, ठीक है. सिमिलरली कैपिटल बजट, कैपिटल रिसीट्स एंड कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर. कैपिटल रिसीट्स और प्लेन कैपिटल और नॉन प्लान और प्लान, ठीक है. तो 2 चीजें हैं यहाँ पे. एग्जाम पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से इस स्लाइड से क्या इंपॉर्टेंट है. फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल, whenever you go through a budget or economic survey document, you should analyze 2 things. What kind of expenditures form the larger portion of the expenditure, ठीक है. For example, non-tax tax revenue is greater than non-tax revenue, ठीक है. Tax revenue is greater than non-tax revenue. Similarly, non-plan expenditure is greater than plan expenditure, ठीक है. तो यहीं पे एक MCQ बन जाता है very easily कि which UPSC can put these 2 statements and ask a simple question, ठीक है. तो अब दूसरा तरीका क्या है इकोनॉमिक सर्वे या बजट को पढ़ने का, कि you go through the basic statistics, ठीक है, and you need to see कि what kind of trend is being observed, ठीक है. Like there can be a question कि in the last decade the revenue expenditure has consistently grown, ठीक है, but you might see कि 2019 या 2018 में कहीं revenue expenditure has dipped, ठीक है. तो you need to remember these things कि what kind of trend about revenue expenditure, non-revenue expenditure, capital expenditure and all these things have been going on, ठीक है. I have this budget document. I will suggest that you also go through this. I have marked many things important that are important. I'll tell you in the end of the class ki what kind of things that are important, ठीक है. Because this class obviously is an explanatory one. It's very detailed, but still you need to go through the class by yourself, the document by yourself also, ठीक है. तो नॉन टैक्स रेवेन्यू एंड टैक्स रेवेन्यू. टैक्स रेवेन्यू आई एक्सप्लेन्ड. नॉन टैक्स रेवेन्यू इज द composition of non tax revenue mainly includes what? Receipt of interest, ठीक है. Okay, government extends loans to state governments and union territories, ठीक है, and even other enterprises also. तो loan has two parts. The first thing is principal amount. The second thing is interest. तो जो principal amount होगा that will be considered in the capital expenditure और capital receipt, ठीक है. लेकिन जो interest receipt होगी, जो interest अगर यूनियन गवर्नमेंट ने उत्तर प्रदेश गवर्नमेंट को कोई लोन दिया है, उस लोन पे जो इंटरेस्ट अक्रू हो रहा है यूनियन गवर्नमेंट को, दैट विल बी कंसिडर्ड एज रिसीप्ट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट, ठीक है, एंड दैट विल बी कंसिडर्ड इन द रेवेन्यू रिसीट. फाइन. सिमिलरली देयर आर शेड्यूल्ड कमर्शियल बैंक्स एंड पब्लिक सेक्टर एंटरप्राइजेस आल्सो. ऑल दीज आर लाइक प्रॉफिट मेकिंग एजेंसीज, ठीक है. तो उनका जो डिविडेंड होगा, ठीक है, दैट विल बी कंसिडर्ड what? Dividend basically is what? The margin of profit, ठीक है, because of equity holding of the government, ठीक है. तो whenever you give someone loan or you have an equity holding in some company or firm, you get dividend. Dividend is nothing but a margin of profit, ठीक है. तो all these things are considered as non-tax revenue. Tax revenue तो simple है, direct और indirect taxes, ठीक है. Okay. So the next thing is this is from the actuals of the budget. जो अभी budget laid down हुआ है, apart from the speech, there are many other documents also that are laid down. But we get to listen the speech in the parliament, ठीक है, on our television sets also. We get to listen the speech. But this is a very important page. For example, the first thing, if you can see, is revenue receipts. The first thing is revenue receipts, okay. The second is revenue expenditure. This is the first and second make the revenue side of the budget, okay, revenue side of the budget, ठीक है. The third is revenue deficit. What is revenue deficit? Revenue deficit is revenue expenditure minus revenue रिसीट्स, यानी रेवेन्यू इनकम कितना हो रहा है और रेवेन्यू एक्सपेंडिचर कितना है, उन दोनों का जो डिफरेंस होगा दैट विल बी कॉल्ड रेवेन्यू डेफिसिट, ठीक है. इफ रेवेन्यू डेफिसिट हैज अ पॉजिटिव वैल्यू तो हमारा वी आर हैविंग अ डेफिसिट. इफ रेवेन्यू डेफिसिट इज हैविंग अ नेगेटिव वैल्यू तो वी आर हैविंग अ सरप्लस, ठीक है. सरप्लस मींस आवर इनकम इज ग्रेटर देन आवर एक्सपेंडिचर और डेफिसिट मींस आवर एक्सपेंडिचर इज ग्रेटर देन आवर इनकम. सिंपल. सिमिलरली अब कैपिटल रिसीट्स आ जाएंगी इन द प्रीवियस स्लाइड ऑल्सो, रेवेन्यू साइड एंड कैपिटल साइड. तो रेवेन्यू में एक्सपेंडिचर होगा और इनकम होगी. रिसीट्स बेसिकली रिप्रेजेंट इनकम, ठीक है, और एक्सपेंडिचर ऑब्वियसली एक्सपेंडिचर. कैपिटल रिसीट्स, ओके, कैपिटल रिसीट्स इस पेज से कई बार क्वेश्चन आया है यूपीएससी में, यूपी पीसीएस में, स्टेट पीसीएस एग्जाम्स में भी बहुत बार आया, ठीक है. इफ यू क्लियरली लुक एट द कैपिटल रिसीट्स, ठीक है, तो कैपिटल रिसीट्स है 3 sections, A, B and C. If you can see, the first one is recovery of loans. Okay, in the previous slide I told you that the interest that is accrued to the union government is considered as revenue receipt. But if the government has recovered the loan itself, ठीक है, अगर उत्तर प्रदेश गवर्नमेंट को यूनियन गवर्नमेंट ने 10,000 करोड़ का लोन दिया था, तो उस 10,000 करोड़ को ही अगर रिकवर कर लिया यूनियन गवर्नमेंट में, तो दैट रिकवरी ऑफ द प्रिंसिपल अमाउंट विल बी कंसिडर्ड कैपिटल रिसीट, ठीक है. तो रिकवरी ऑफ लोन्स इज कंसिडर्ड व्हाट? कैपिटल रिसीट. ओके, द सेकंड वन इज मेनली पीएसयू डिसइन्वेस्टमेंट्स. अभी बहुत सारी कंपनीज का डिसइन्वेस्टमेंट हो रहा है, बजट पे भी बहुत सारे डिसइन्वेस्टमेंट का बात किया गया है, एंड देयर हैज बीन नाउ अ डिसइन्वेस्टमेंट पॉलिसी हैज आल्सो बीन फॉर्मुलेटेड. आई विल टेल यू इन द एंड. तो अब जो डिसइन्वेस्टमेंट, पीएसयूज के डिसइन्वेस्टमेंट से पैसा आ रहा है, दैट विल बी कंसिडर्ड कैपिटल रिसीट. फाइन. द थर्ड वन इज बोरोइंग एंड अदर लायबिलिटीज. if the government is borrowing in the market, ठीक है, on the, like if government is issuing treasury bills and government securities है ना, G-Secs and T-bills, and then government is acquiring a lot of cash, that will be considered borrowing by the government, ठीक है. तो borrowing is called capital receipt. तो I hope this is clear. तो अगर हम इसको थोड़ा और clear, because this is very important, budget से यही question आता है, what is capital receipt, what is revenue receipt. तो capital receipt की अगर definition की बात करें हम, ठीक है, capital receipts means earnings, as I told. So capital receipts are those receipts, listen to it very carefully, capital receipts are those receipts which either create liability, okay, or lead to the destruction of our financial assets, ठीक है. They create liability, ठीक है, either or loss of assets. Any earning that we do through these two things is called capital receipt. We'll try to understand it. Create liability, how? If government is taking loan from the market, so that loan, ठीक है, that loan will be considered as capital receipt, capital income, ठीक है, but that loan has to be sometime paid back, ठीक है. So that actually has made our government rich by some kind of money, ठीक है. This loan actually made our government rich in that time, but it has also created a time liability, ठीक है. So that has created a liability. The second is loss of assets. If the government is disinvesting its PSUs, ठीक है, तो disinvestment से पैसा तो आएगा definitely, but उस disinvestment से हमारे assets भी तो खत्म हो रहे हैं, ठीक है. For example, if the government is disinvesting what? Air India, तो Air India को बेचने से पैसा तो आएगा, but हमारा asset जो Air India एक asset था वो भी खत्म हो गया. तो capital receipts का definition ही यही है, those receipts which either create liability or which lead to the loss of assets. Understood? It's a very basic definition. Now again back to this. So capital receipts, okay, capital receipts, revenue receipts, revenue expenditure, okay, revenue deficit. See, revenue deficit is 2.7% of the GDP. That is, this one is for base year, okay. अब यहाँ पे दो चीजें हैं, base year और budget year and revised budget estimate and revised estimate. There are two kind of things. Budget estimate is for like government has presented this budget for the financial year of 21-22, ठीक है. तो जो भी projections 21-22 के हैं, that will be called budget estimates. लेकिन प्रीवियस ईयर के जो बजट एस्टिमेट्स थे, अभी जो एक्चुअल खर्चे हुए हैं पूरे ईयर, उनका एनालिसिस करके प्रीवियस ईयर का बजट एस्टिमेट था, उसके अकॉर्डिंग जो नए खर्चे हुए हैं, जो नए खर्चे होंगे, दैट विल बी कॉल्ड रिवाइज्ड एस्टिमेट्स, ठीक है. तो सिमिलरली 2019-20 के लिए प्रोविजनल एस्टिमेट्स फॉर 3.3%, ठीक है, प्रोजेक्टेड. Okay, now again back to capital receipts, recovery of loans, other receipts, borrowing and other liabilities, that will be called. The fifth is capital expenditure. This is called capital receipt. Capital expenditure, any expenditure that leads to creation of capital assets. For example, नया bridge बनाना is a capital expenditure, ठीक है. Government has this year talked a lot about this capital expenditure. They are trying to increase it a lot. We'll see. Non-debt receipts. Now what is called non-debt creating capital receipts, ठीक है. Non-debt creating capital receipts we can see 1 plus 4A plus 4B, okay, 1 plus 4A and 4B. So this is also an important term. These basic terms are very important from exam point of view. वी अंडरस्टूड कैपिटल रिसीट्स. अब कैपिटल रिसीट्स दो प्रकार की होती हैं, ठीक है. एक डेट क्रिएटिंग एंड फर्स्ट इज डेट क्रिएटिंग कैपिटल रिसीट्स एंड द सेकंड वन इज नॉन डेट क्रिएटिंग कैपिटल रिसीट्स. क्यों? नॉन डेट क्रिएटिंग कैपिटल रिसीट्स विल लीड टू लॉस ऑफ एसेट्स. ठीक है. अगेन विल ट्राई टू अंडरस्टैंड दैट कैपिटल रिसीट इज अ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट टर्म. ठीक है. From exam point of view, it's very important to understand capital receipts. Capital receipts we understood from the definition of the capital receipt is those receipts which either lead to development of a liability, that is creation of a liability, है ना, or that leads to loss of asset. ठीक है. अगर हम इसको दूसरे तरीके से क्लासिफाई करना चाहें तो डेट क्रिएटिंग एंड नॉन डेट क्रिएटिंग. ठीक है. नॉन डेट क्रिएटिंग, फॉर एग्जाम्पल डिसइन्वेस्टमेंट इज अ नॉन डेट क्रिएटिंग कैपिटल रिसीट. अगर एनटीपीसी को बेच दिया गवर्नमेंट ने तो कोई डेट तो क्रिएट नहीं हो रहा, डेफिनेटली अ लॉस ऑफ एसेट इज टेकिंग प्लेस. ठीक है. तो डिसइन्वेस्टमेंट इज व्हाट? डिसइन्वेस्टमेंट इज नॉन डेट क्रिएटिंग कैपिटल रिसीट. ठीक है. बट इफ अ गवर्नमेंट इज बोरोइंग इन द मार्केट बाय इशू ऑफ ट्रेजरी बिल्स, दैट विल बी कॉल्ड डेट क्रिएटिंग कैपिटल रिसीट. ठीक है. तो गवर्नमेंट बोरोइंग है ना, दैट इज कॉल्ड बोरोइंग ऑफ, या लोन्स जो है वो क्या है, अगर गवर्नमेंट लोन ले रही है या बोरो कर रही है तो दैट विल बी कॉल्ड डेट क्रिएटिंग कैपिटल रिसीट्स. लेकिन pay a lot of attention to it. Debt, I am saying debt creating capital receipts. If I talk about the non-debt creating receipts in total, what I'm saying is non-debt creating receipts in total, not only capital receipts but revenue also. What I'm saying is non-debt creating receipts, NDR, any non-debt creating receipts. Non-debt creating receipts will be first of all both of these capital receipts, यानी नॉन डेट, तो नॉन डेट क्रिएटिंग कैपिटल रिसीट प्लस व्हाट, रेवेन्यू रिसीट. आई होप दिस इज अंडरस्टूड. दिस इज वेरी सिंपल, इट्स नॉट टफ, नो रॉकेट साइंस, है ना. पहली बात तो हमने समझने की कोशिश की कि कैपिटल रिसीट क्या है. कैपिटल रिसीट में लॉस ऑफ एसेट और लायबिलिटी क्रिएट होती है. तो लायबिलिटी बेसिकली डेट क्रिएटिंग होती है. तो हमने दूसरी डेफिनेशन जो है कि नॉन डेट क्रिएटिंग रिसीट्स टोटल, दैट विल इंक्लूड नॉन डेट क्रिएटिंग कैपिटल रिसीट्स, बेसिकली डिसइन्वेस्टमेंट एंड रेवेन्यू रिसीट्स. तो रेवेन्यू रिसीट्स तो ऑब्वियसली आर एनी काइंड ऑफ रिसीट, बेसिकली रेवेन्यू रिसीट्स यानी टैक्स रेवेन्यू, नॉन टैक्स रेवेन्यू, एंड कैपिटल क्रिएटिंग रिसीट और नॉन डेट क्रिएटिंग कैपिटल रिसीट, दैट आर recovery of loans and PSU disinvestment. Okay, that is called non-debt creating receipts. Yes, we were on the point number 6, non-debt creating receipts. What is total expenditure? Capital expenditure plus revenue expenditure. ठीक है, 2 plus 5, capital expenditure plus revenue expenditure. Understood? Now what is plan expenditure? Plan expenditure जो 5 year plans का expenditure होता था उसको हम plan expenditure कहते हैं. It is not been calculated now. Non-plan expenditure, any other expenditure that is not planned expenditure under the 5 year plan, that is called non-plan expenditure. But you can see that, sorry, जब तक ये कैलकुलेट होता था, है ना, till 2016-17, तो non-plan expenditure was always greater than the plan expenditure. ठीक है. Okay, understood? So this is an important observation. Now 8th point is fiscal deficit. What is fiscal deficit? Total expenditure minus total income. Like revenue deficit में क्या था? Revenue expenditure minus revenue receipt या revenue income. Similarly, fiscal deficit is, okay, from this point we go 7. 7 is what? Total expenditure. ठीक है, minus 1. 1 is revenue receipt minus 4A. 4A मतलब recovery of loans and 4B ये. ठीक है. तो again we go back to our board. this is very important. Fiscal deficit is also very important because all these terms are like repeatedly coming into the exams and people get confused because of the lack of conceptual clarity. That is why it is very important to understand कि और in greater detail कि ये चीजें हैं क्या, ठीक है. So what is fiscal deficit? Fine. Fiscal deficit is nothing but expenditure minus income, ठीक है. This is called fiscal deficit. अब expenditure is capital expenditure plus revenue expenditure, ठीक है. We'll elaborate it. Capital expenditure plus revenue expenditure. अगर इसको समझने की कोशिश करें तो कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर क्या है? क्रिएशन ऑफ कैपिटल एसेट्स लाइक ब्रिजेस, रोड्स बनाने में जो भी एक्सपेंडिचर आएगा दैट विल बी कॉल्ड कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर. व्हाट इज रेवेन्यू एक्सपेंडिचर? डे टू डे एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन ऑफ गवर्नमेंट, ठीक है. सब्सिडीज, ये सारी चीजें किस में आएंगी? रेवेन्यू एक्सपेंडिचर में. फाइन. और अगर इफ द गवर्नमेंट इज पेइंग इंटरेस्ट ऑन द लोन दैट इज इट हैज टेकन दैट विल बी कॉल्ड रेवेन्यू एक्सपेंडिचर. इफ गवर्नमेंट इज अर्निंग एन इंटरेस्ट ऑन द लोन दैट इट हैज गिवन टू समवन एल्स दैट विल बी कॉल्ड रेवेन्यू रिसीट, ठीक है. तो दो प्रकार का क्वालिफिकेशन, दो प्रकार का एक इंपॉर्टेंट डिफरेंशिएशन ये है कि एक्सपेंडिचर और रिसीट में डिफरेंशिएशन, और दूसरा डिफरेंशिएशन कैपिटल और रेवेन्यू बजट. ओके, दैट शुड बी वेरी क्लियर. तो टोटल एक्सपेंडिचर विल बी कंपोज्ड ऑफ कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर प्लस रेवेन्यू एक्सपेंडिचर, ठीक है. द सेकेंड थिंग इज इनकम. नाउ इफ यू गो बैक टू दिस स्लाइड, ठीक है, तो फिस्कल डेफिसिट इज 7 minus 1 7 minus 1 minus 4A and 4B. 4A is recovery of loans and 4B is other receipts. But capital receipts में जो borrowing and other liabilities हैं वो भी included है, ठीक है. Income will be what? If we try to understand this in very simple terms, तो obviously capital receipts plus what? First one is capital receipt, दूसरा revenue receipt, ठीक है. जैसे यहाँ पे कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर, रेवेन्यू एक्सपेंडिचर, वैसे ही कैपिटल रिसीट्स और रेवेन्यू रिसीट. तो रेवेन्यू रिसीट तो पूरा ही इंक्लूड कर लो, लेकिन कैपिटल रिसीट में वहां पे 4A एंड 4B हैज बीन इंक्लूडेड बट 4C हैज बीन एक्सक्लूडेड. 4A इज लाइक कैपिटल रिसीट में कौन कौन सा इंक्लूडेड है? द फर्स्ट वन इज फॉर एग्जांपल डिसइन्वेस्टमेंट. द सेकंड वन इज dividend. For example, dividend is not considered. Let me see. Recovery of loans. Yeah. Loans. Sorry. Recovery of loans. जो गवर्नमेंट ने किसी को लोन दिया था, अगर उसका प्रिंसिपल अमाउंट रिकवर किया तो वो. लेकिन कैपिटल रिसीट में एक और कंपोनेंट होता है. वो होता है क्या? उसको मैं यहां लिख लेता हूं. दैट इज कॉल्ड what? Borrowings and other liabilities. तो जब हम कैपिटल रिसीट बेसिकली इज इनकम. व्हेन वी आर कंसीडरिंग द इनकम फ्रॉम द कैपिटल साइड, तो हम तीन चीजें कंसीडर कर रहे हैं. लेकिन हम यहां पे इनकम में जब फिस्कल डेफिसिट कैलकुलेट कर रहे हैं तो दो चीजें कंसीडर कर रहे हैं. दैट इज एन एनोमली. व्हाई? बिकॉज बोरोइंग एंड लायबिलिटी एंड अदर लायबिलिटीज डेफिनेटली आर इनकम but are a liability that has to be paid back in time. That is not the government can claim कि this belongs only to me, ठीक है. It has to be paid back in some amount of time. So since this is not completely an income but a liability, so it has been excluded from consideration of fiscal deficit. ठीक है, understood? तो again, क्योंकि fiscal deficit का मतलब क्या है? Fiscal deficit का मतलब how much of the borrowing that government has to do in the market या कहीं से भी, so that ये अपने जो खर्चे हैं जो इसकी अर्निंग से ज्यादा हो गए हैं उसको कंपनसेट कर सके. अंडरस्टूड? तो दिस इज ऑलरेडी अ बोरोइंग, ठीक है. तो अगर इसको भी गवर्नमेंट कंसिडर कर लेती तो डबल काउंटिंग हो जाता, ठीक है. तो इसलिए कैपिटल रिसीट्स में खाली डिसइन्वेस्टमेंट और पीएसयूज का डिसइन्वेस्टमेंट के थ्रू जो अर्निंग आ रही है वो कंसिडर करेंगे, और दूसरा क्या कंसिडर करेंगे? रिकवरी ऑफ लोन्स. अंडरस्टूड? So this completes fiscal deficit. Now another important last point is ninth number is primary deficit. What is primary deficit? Primary deficit is 8 minus 2a. 8 is total fiscal deficit. What is 2a? Revenue expenditure is 2, interest payment is a. तो revenue expenditure is रेवेन्यू एक्सपेंडिचर का जो इंटरेस्ट पेमेंट का कंपोनेंट है, अगर फिस्कल डेफिसिट में से उसको रिमूव कर देंगे तो दैट विल गिव प्राइमरी डेफिसिट. अंडरस्टूड? बट व्हाट इज द इंप्लीकेशन ऑफ प्राइमरी डेफिसिट एंड व्हाट इज इट्स इंपॉर्टेंस? ठीक है, तो विल ट्राई टू अंडरस्टैंड दिस इन अ बिट ऑफ डिटेल. तो अनदर टर्म इज प्राइमरी डेफिसिट. ठीक है, अगर हम इसका फॉर्मूला देखें तो बहुत सिंपल है, इज इक्वल टू फिस्कल डेफिसिट माइनस इंटरेस्ट ऑब्लिगेशंस. इंटरेस्ट ऑब्लिगेशंस. ठीक है, अब प्राइमरी डेफिसिट पढ़ना जरूरी क्यों है? फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल रेवेन्यू एक्सपेंडिचर. ठीक है, what interest obligation will be considered into the revenue expenditure and revenue expenditure का सबसे greater portion जो है वो हमारा interest payment के form में जाता है. यानी our interest payments are like greatest source of our expenditure. ठीक है, तो हमारा fiscal, if we look at the graph again, तो primary deficit is 0.4, इसका value है 0.4. ठीक है, primary deficit represent the amount of borrowing that the government has to make in a financial year to finance itself other than paying the interest on the previous loans. ठीक है, क्योंकि प्राइमरी डेफिसिट का डेफिनेशन क्या है? प्राइमरी डेफिसिट का डेफिनेशन है कि फिस्कल डेफिसिट माइनस इंटरेस्ट ऑब्लिगेशन ऑन द प्रीवियस लोन्स. लाइक प्रीवियस गवर्नमेंट हैज टेकन सम लोन, दिस गवर्नमेंट इज कंटिन्यूसली पेइंग इंटरेस्ट ऑन देम, ऑन दोज लोन्स. ठीक है, तो अगर हम उस लोन के इंटरेस्ट पेमेंट को हटा दें तो हमें एक्चुअल हमारा पता चलेगा कि हमारे जो खर्चे हैं वो एक्सपेंडिचर से कितने ज्यादा हैं. क्यों? क्योंकि जो एक्सपेंडिचर है, अगर एक्सपेंडिचर का ग्रेटर पोर्शन इंटरेस्ट पेमेंट है, ठीक है, तो दिस एक्सपेंडिचर इज नॉट गोइंग टू लीड टू क्रिएशन ऑफ एनी कैपिटल एसेट्स. ठीक है, दैट इज अगर फिस्कल डेफिसिट इज वेरी हाई, ठीक है, एंड रेवेन्यू डेफिसिट इज ऑल्सो वेरी हाई, तो फिस्कल डेफिसिट और रेवेन्यू डेफिसिट का गैप बड़ा होना चाहिए फ्रॉम अ गुड इकोनॉमिक पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू. फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल, अ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट पॉइंट इज द गैप बिटवीन द फिस्कल एंड रेवेन्यू डेफिसिट शुड बी हाई. व्हाई? रेवेन्यू डेफिसिट आपके घर को चलाने का जो खर्चा है वो है, ठीक है, और फिस्कल डेफिसिट आपका टोटल खर्चे और टोटल अर्निंग का हिसाब है. अगर मोस्ट ऑफ द खर्चा आप अपने घर को चलाने में कर देते हो तो आपके पास सेविंग्स नहीं होंगी. ठीक है, लेकिन आपका टोटल खर्चा भी बहुत ज्यादा हो जाएगा. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, इफ आपके घर को चलाने का टोटल खर्चा 5,000 रुपीज, ठीक है, और आपकी अर्निंग है 3,000 रुपीज, और आपके दिस विल फॉर एग्जाम्पल दिस कंसिडर दिस ए फिस्कल डेफिसिट. This is your earning and 2,000 rupees is your what? Expenditure on revenue expenditure. ठीक है, तो revenue deficit कितना हो गया? This is total earning, revenue, and this is revenue expenditure 1,000 rupees. ठीक है, अब fiscal deficit minus revenue deficit, ठीक है, तो is equal to 4,000. This is high. That means the gap between fiscal and revenue deficit should be high, so that जो fiscal deficit represent the borrowing of the government, that borrowing can be usefully implemented into creation of capital assets and not only running of the government, because high revenue deficit represents the higher costs incurred in the daily running of the government. ठीक है, अब revenue deficit को कम करोगे तो क्या कम करना पड़ेगा? इंटरेस्ट पेमेंट्स. क्यों? क्योंकि इंटरेस्ट पेमेंट्स आर द मेजर सोर्स ऑफ हाई रेवेन्यू डेफिसिट. अंडरस्टूड? तो आई होप ऑल दीज टर्म्स आर नाउ अंडरस्टूड. फाइन. नाउ लेट्स कम टू द बजट पोर्शन. ठीक है, एज आई ऑलरेडी टोल्ड यू कि मोस्ट वेयर डज मनी कम फ्रॉम, व्हाट आर द आवर सोर्सेज ऑफ आवर इनकम. This is a pie chart that represents 1 rupee. ठीक है, that can be considered a percentage. You can also consider it as a percentage. 36% of our earning is coming from borrowings. ठीक है, यानी सबसे ज्यादा most of the earning comes from borrowings. Okay, the second number is GST, third number is income tax, and then corporation tax. So you have to remember this. The greatest portion of earning is coming from borrowings. The second is from GST. The third is from corporation tax, and third is from income tax, and the fourth is corporation tax. ठीक है. Similarly, net receipt of the center. This represents the total net receipt. Net receipt means total earning minus total expenditure minus earning. ठीक. So you can see the trend that in 2021 this has seen a dip. Fine. तो आपको ये क्वेश्चन बन सकता है कि in the last decade, ठीक है, the net receipt of the government has been consistently increasing. That is true, but that has only happened till 2021 because of the coronavirus impact. There was a sharp dip of the net receipt of the center. ठीक है, तो I'm telling you all this because this forms an important part of our UPSC exam question. ठीक है, क्योंकि बजट से क्वेश्चन यहीं से आते हैं. ये ग्राफ्स को ऑब्जर्व करना होता है कि कौन सा अर्निंग कंसिस्टेंटली राइज हो रहा है, कौन सा अर्निंग कंसिस्टेंटली डाउन जा रहा है. ठीक है. Similarly, where does money go? Okay, so largest part of our investment is in interest payment. ठीक है, 20% of our expenditure is going into interest payment on the loans that we have taken. ठीक है. Similarly, the central sector scheme is the second number. State share from the tax and duty is second number. The third number is central sector schemes, other expenditure, finance commission transfers. ठीक है, तो go through this if you have the document. Again, composition of expenditure, highest is interest payment, the second number is subsidy, third is transfer to states, फिर defense. Understood? एक बार इसको देख लेना. This is trend of capital expenditure. Now revenue expenditure and capital expenditure. यहाँ पे क्या लिखा है? IEBR. IEBR is internal extra budgetary resources. Internal extra budgetary resources is गवर्नमेंट अपना फाइनेंस जो फाइनेंसेस है वो दो तरीके से चलाती है. द फर्स्ट इज ग्रॉस बजटरी सपोर्ट, दैट इज द गवर्नमेंट एलोकेट्स मनी फ्रॉम द कंसोलिडेटेड फंड ऑफ इंडिया. द सेकेंड इज IEBR, इंटरनल एक्स्ट्रा बजटरी रिसोर्सेज. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, देयर इज अ कंपनी कॉल्ड NTPC. ठीक है, इफ गवर्नमेंट आस्क्स NTPC, ठीक है, टू फाइनेंस गवर्नमेंट बजट, ठीक है, या गवर्नमेंट टेक्स NTPC's money and uses to finance its fiscal deficit. ठीक है, तो that will be called extra budgetary resource. ठीक है, तो दो चीजें हो गई, एक तो gross budgetary allocation and the second one is extra budgetary resources. Understood? ये terminologies important है. तो what you can see is from 2016 onwards the extra budgetary resources have increased a lot. ठीक है, extra budgetary resources, and one important thing is जो ये NTPC का जो खर्चा आएगा to fund the fiscal deficit of government, that will not be counted where into the government balance sheet. अब वो government balance sheet में नहीं रिफ्लेक्ट होगा तो fiscal deficit की वैल्यू गवर्नमेंट लो रख पाती है. ठीक है, although NTPC से जो पैसा लिया गवर्नमेंट owes it to pay it back, still वो पैसा like 50,000 crore अगर 5,000 crore अगर गवर्नमेंट ने NTPC से लिया तो NTPC will be financing the government's budget, government's deficit, but still it will be reflected in NTPC's balance sheet and not in the government's balance sheet. ठीक है, अकाउंटिंग प्रिंसिपल्स की वजह से, उसकी वजह से गवर्नमेंट अपने फिस्कल डेफिसिट की वैल्यू को लो रख पाती है. अंडरस्टूड? Now budget. There are the 6 pillars of the budget. ठीक है, the first one is health and well-being. The second one is physical and financial capital and infrastructure. The third one is inclusive development for aspirational India. Okay. Reinvigorating human capital, innovation and R&D, minimum government and maximum governance. These are the 6 basic pillars of our budget, but we will be dealing primarily with health and well-being, ठीक है, physical financial capital, ठीक है, and inclusive development and taxation proposals. तो health and well-being, the most important budgetary allocation this year has been to health and well-being. Now, last year, the budget estimate was 94,452 crore for health and well-being. Ministry of Health got 94,452 crores. This year, it has been increased by 137%, a huge increase, ठीक है? It has been increased by 137%. प्रीवियस ईयर के मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ हेल्थ का जो एलोकेशन था उससे 137% ज्यादा एलोकेशन है इस बार. दिस इज 2,23,846 crores, ठीक है, an increase of 137%. Now a very important scheme, प्रधानमंत्री आत्मनिर्भर स्वस्थ भारत योजना has been launched, ठीक है, with the budgetary outlay of 64,180 crores over 6 years. This is very important from our exam point of view. This is important. 64,180 crore for 6 years, क्योंकि हमने previous years में देखा है 2016 onwards, 2016, 2017, 18 papers में this data has also been asked many times, ठीक है. For example कि ये 10 years के लिए है, 5 years के लिए है, 7 years के लिए या 6 years के लिए है, तो this is very important. So this is first component. The second is nutrition, merger of supplementary nutrition program and Poshan Abhiyan to be launched at Poshan Abhiyan 2.0. Now what is supplementary nutrition program? Supplementary nutrition program is a nutrition enrichment program for children below 6 years of age, pregnant women and lactating mothers, ठीक है. तो of like BPL families, उनके लिए सप्लीमेंट्री, उनकी न्यूट्रिशन नीड्स को पूरा करने के लिए सप्लीमेंट्री न्यूट्रिशन प्रोग्राम. पोषण अभियान वाज लॉन्च्ड इन 2018. इट इज एन अम्ब्रेला, इट्स अ मिशन, ठीक है, एंड इट इज आल्सो फॉर. अब इन दोनों में डिफरेंस क्या है? दिस इज अ फ्लैगशिप मिशन एंड दिस इज अ स्कीम. ठीक है. तो फ्लैगशिप मिशन में बहुत सारी चीजें होती हैं और स्कीम डेडिकेटेड है. पोषण अभियान टोटल न्यूट्रिशनल आउटकम्स को इंप्रूव करने के लिए है, ठीक है. इट वाज फॉर्म्ड आफ्टर द रिकमेंडेशन ऑफ नीति आयोग, ठीक है. हाउएवर सप्लीमेंट्री और दोनों में दूसरा इंपॉर्टेंट डिफरेंस ये है कि पोषण अभियान आल्सो कंसीडर्स द एडोलेसेंट गर्ल चिल्ड्रन, बट सप्लीमेंट्री न्यूट्रिशन प्रोग्राम डज नॉट कंसीडर एडोलेसेंट गर्ल चिल्ड्रन, ठीक है. इट इज फॉर चिल्ड्रन बिलो 6 years of age and प्रेग्नेंट एंड लैक्टेटिंग मदर्स, प्रेग्नेंट विमेन एंड लैक्टेटिंग मदर्स, ठीक है. अब इन दोनों को मर्ज करके पोषण अभियान 2.0 लॉन्च किया जाएगा. एंड द अदर थिंग इज कि दिस वाज फॉर पीपल बिलो पॉवर्टी लाइन, ठीक है, या लो इनकम ग्रुप, ठीक है. पोषण अभियान वाज फॉर एवरीवन, ठीक है. नाउ अनदर इंपॉर्टेंट थिंग व्हाट वी ऑब्जर्व्ड इज ड्यूरिंग द कोरोना टाइम्स, ठीक है, कि nutrition benefits were like very all these people who migrated and all these vulnerable section of people, they faced acute nutrition problems, ठीक है. तो इसके लिए nutrition has been mentioned in a lot of like in the very beginning of the budget with a great emphasis. Now universal coverage of water supply, जल जीवन मिशन अर्बन, ठीक है, जल जीवन मिशन. Now whenever you are reading these schemes, तो it's very important to consider कि इनका बजट क्या, बजटरी आउटले क्या है, कितने ईयर्स के लिए है, and which ministry is going to implement it. Like जल जीवन मिशन अर्बन is going to be implemented by Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs. Similarly, जल जीवन मिशन that was for rural, launched for like rural areas, that is being implemented by Ministry of Jal Shakti and Department of ड्रिंकिंग वाटर एंड सैनिटेशन एंड हाइजीन, ठीक है। तो जल जीवन मिशन अर्बन विल बी लॉन्च्ड टू प्रोवाइड यूनिवर्सल वाटर सप्लाई टू अर्बन एरियाज, ठीक है, in all 4,378 urban local bodies with 2.86 crore household with tap connection, ठीक है। Now tap connection as well as liquid waste management in 500 Amrit cities, ठीक है। Now what are Amrit cities? Amrit cities अटल मिशन फॉर रीजनरेशन एंड अर्बन ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन। इस मिशन के अंडर में बहुत सारी सिटीज को सिलेक्ट किया गया है हर स्टेट से। स्टेट्स रिकमेंडेशन भेजते हैं सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट को कि कंसिडर दिस सिटी एज अमृत सिटी। फिर वहाँ पे सॉलिड वेस्ट मैनेजमेंट और हाउस होल्ड वाटर सप्लाई और अर्बन इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर सीवेज मैनेजमेंट, इन तीनों चीज़ों को री इन्फोर्स करके और बेहतर बनाया जाता है। दैट इज कॉल्ड अमृत सिटीज। दीज सिटीज आर अमृत सिटीज। तो अब सारी अमृत सिटीज में टैप वाटर सप्लाई पहुंचाने का क्या है, मिशन है, जल जीवन मिशन अर्बन। फाइन। Earlier that Jal Jeevan mission was rural part, that is being implemented by Ministry of Jal Shakti under, and the department which is implementing is Department of Drinking Water, ठीक है, Sanitation and Hygiene। Implementation period is 5 years 2021 से लेके 2026 तक। Funds is 2,87,000 crore rupees over 5 year period। Fine। तो I hope you understood। The second is स्वच्छ भारत, स्वस्थ भारत, ठीक है। Now स्वच्छ भारत अर्बन 2.0 has been launched। स्वस्थ भारत अर्बन 2.0 with financial allocation of rupees 1,41,000 for 5 years। Okay। Includes what? Include waste water treatment, obviously, source segregation of garbage, as this was mentioned in what? Solid waste disposal, solid waste disposal policy, ठीक है, 2016। segregation of waste at source, reduction in single use plastic, okay, and bioremediation of all legacy dump sites। जितने भी पुराने डंप साइट्स हैं जहां पे सिटीज का कचरा डंप होता है, उनका बायोरेमेडिएशन। नाउ अगेन क्लीन एयर, नेशनल क्लीन एयर प्रोग्राम, that is being run by Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change। Allocation of rupees 2,217 crores for 42 urban centers, ठीक है, with urban centers जिनका population 1 million से ज्यादा है, उनको ही ये फैसिलिटी मिली है क्लीन एयर वाली, ठीक है। 2,217 crore rupees has been allocated under National Clean Air Program, ठीक है। For another very important thing that has basically cherished the markets and automobile sector को भी चेरिश किया है, that is vehicle scrappage policy। it is a voluntary scrappage policy। commercial vehicles को 15 year के बाद automatic testing के थ्रू गुजरना पड़ेगा if they want to scrap your vehicle, ठीक है। if you have like a vehicle that 4-wheeler or like any vehicle that is older than 15 years and it has been a commercial vehicle, you can go for a voluntary testing, a fitness testing of the vehicle, and then the government will pay you to scrap your vehicle, ठीक है ना। Although the scheme has not been announced yet, ठीक है, the details of the scheme are yet to be formulated by Ministry of Road Transport and Highways, but what we understand from the budget speech is 15 years for 15 years for commercial vehicles and private vehicles if older than 20 years। So the government will try to incentivize scrapping them because of vehicle scrappage। क्यों जरूरी है? दो चीजों के लिए, like BS6 is now running, Bharat Stage 6। The fuel that we are going to get from the petrol pumps or filling stations is also BS6 compliant, but the engines are outdated। Like if a vehicle that is 15 or 20 years old right now in the market, that has an outdated engine, ठीक है। So those engines have a lesser efficiency and their emissions are high, but Bharat Stage 6 emissions are very strict, है ना। तो to reduce air pollution, And what other thing this will do? This will create a demand for new vehicles. ठीक है? So that is why automotive sector has been very happy about this. The second point is vaccines. Government has allocated rupees 35,000 crore for COVID-19 vaccination, and the Honorable Finance Minister has said that this will be further increased if need arises. Another important thing is pneumococcal vaccine. ठीक है? This is pneumococcal vaccine has been developed by Indian company Serum Institute of India that is located in Pune. ठीक है? Is made in India. Again, made in India को make in India को बढ़ावा देने के लिए. Now it is being provided in 5 states. It will be extended to the whole of the country. ठीक है? Understood? Pneumococcal vaccine करता क्या है? It is a vaccine against pneumonia. ठीक है? Okay, that was health and well-being part. The second is physical and financial capital and infrastructure. This is again very important because government is trying to constantly improve our capital expenditure on the infrastructure sector. ठीक है? Like there was a report by Niti Aayog also कि India will be requiring $4 trillion investment to the tune of $4 trillion in like next 10 years to meet the infrastructure demand of the country. For that, Niti Aayog basically recommended a high-level working committee was formed to look into the matter for infrastructure financing, and that committee recommended the formation of what? National Infrastructure Pipeline. Now, National Infrastructure Pipeline consisted of like around 6,000 projects worth 111 lakh crore rupees. Now that National Infrastructure Pipeline has been extended. We'll see what has happened. First of all, a sharp increase in capital expenditure. Okay? As I told in the very beginning, if you understood that, this lecture will be very easy. Why? Because those were the keys to understanding this document. A sharp increase in capital expenditure. What is capital expenditure? Expenditure is there are two kinds of expenditures. The first one is revenue expenditure and the second is capital expenditure. Revenue expenditure does not lead to creation of any capital assets. Revenue expenditure mainly consists of interest payments, that is interest on the previous loans. The second is day running of the administration. So that is a sinking fund basically. This is not going to create any viable capital asset. So that is why we have to consistently increase our capital expenditure. The government has shown a sharp increase to rupees 5.54 lakh crore for 2021-22. For this coming financial year, government has allocated 5.54 lakh crore for capital expenditure. For the previous financial year, it was 4.12 lakh crore. है ना? But we ended up spending 4.93 lakh crore. तो ठीक है, यहां से भी आप समझ सकते हैं कि बजट एस्टिमेट और रिवाइज्ड एस्टिमेट में क्या डिफरेंस है. फॉर एग्जांपल 2020-21, ठीक है, फिर 21-22. दिस इज द प्रीवियस फाइनेंशियल ईयर, दिस इज द कमिंग वन. ठीक है, प्रीवियस फाइनेंशियल ईयर के लिए बजट एस्टिमेट, that means when our finance minister laid down the budget in 2020 on 2nd February 2020, she estimated to spend 4.212 lakh crore, ठीक है, on capital expenditure. But by the end of this year, government spent 4.93 lakh crore rupees. ठीक है. Now this is called revised estimate. ठीक है, अभी गवर्नमेंट ने कैलकुलेट किया by the end of this year we have spent this much of amount. So this was budget estimate, this is revised estimate. Now for 21-22 the budget estimate for capital expenditure is 5.45 lakh crore rupees. ठीक है, this is the amount of estimate that the government is going to spend, the estimated expenditure 5.54 lakh crore rupees. Second point is creation of a national monetization pipeline. ठीक है, तो national monetization pipeline. What is national monetization pipeline? तो इसको समझने के लिए सबसे पहले नेशनल इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर पाइपलाइन को समझना जरूरी है. What was national infrastructure pipeline? तो national infrastructure pipeline was government took a lot of inputs from various stakeholders like industries or state governments, है ना, local bodies और इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर कंपनीज, इन सारी बॉडीज से गवर्नमेंट ने इनपुट लिया, सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट ने, एंड देन दे फॉर्मुलेटेड अ पॉलिसी ऑफ इम्प्लीमेंटिंग सर्टेन इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर प्रोजेक्ट्स. ठीक है, तो ये सारे प्रोजेक्ट्स को हम ये कह सकते हैं कि दे हैव बीन पाइपलाइंड, कि वन बाय वन दीज प्रोजेक्ट्स विल बी इम्प्लीमेंटेड. एंड नेशनल इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर पाइपलाइन वाज 111 lakh वर द वैल्यू ऑफ 111 lakh crore. ठीक है, and this funding was to come through three sources: states, center and industries, मतलब प्राइवेट सेक्टर. ये तीनों इसमें इन्वेस्ट करेंगे. ठीक है, and then these projects are going to be implemented. Why? Because infrastructure projects have very high gestation period. They take longer time to मटीरियलाइज. ठीक है, तो फंड्स का रिटर्न आने में टाइम लगता है. ठीक है, एंड दे हैव हायर कॉस्ट्स, लाइक 111 लाख करोड़ रुपीस गवर्नमेंट के लिए एक बार इन्वेस्ट करना इज अ टफ थिंग. इसलिए गवर्नमेंट रोप्ड इन 3 एंटिटीज. ठीक है, तो नाउ गवर्नमेंट इज गोइंग टू क्रिएट अ नेशनल मोनेटाइजेशन पाइपलाइन ऑन द लाइंस ऑफ नेशनल इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर पाइपलाइन. तो अब इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर इंप्लीमेंट करने के लिए गवर्नमेंट को पैसे चाहिए. वो पैसे गवर्नमेंट कहाँ से लाना चाहती है? एसेट मोनेटाइजेशन के थ्रू. ठीक है, फॉर एग्जाम्पल व्हाट इज कॉल्ड एसेट मोनेटाइजेशन? फॉर एग्जाम्पल इफ यू हैव अ होम, ठीक है, इन लाइक इन योर विलेज और समवेयर, लाइक इफ यू लाइक देयर आर रोड्स. ठीक है, देयर आर मेनी रोड्स. इफ गवर्नमेंट इंप्लीमेंट्स टोल्स, तो यहाँ टोल से अर्निंग होगी. ओके, दिस अर्निंग कैन बी यूज्ड इन मेकिंग मोर रोड्स. ठीक है, that is called asset monetization, unlocking the value of assets. ठीक है, we'll try to understand it in a bit of detail right now. Setting up of development financial institutions. ठीक है, what are development financial institutions? They are nothing but a kind of fund, infrastructure fund. ठीक है, जैसे INVITs है, RIETs है, तो वैसे ही ये भी एक infrastructure fund होगा with the base capital of 20,000 crore rupees, and the government will try to make these institutions capable of lending to the tune of rupees 5 lakh crore by the end of 2026. ठीक है, an additional 44,000 crore has been allocated to Department of Economic Affairs. ठीक है, Department of Economic Affairs को additional 44,000 crore allocate किया गया है, so that this 44,000 crore will be used by Department of Economic Affairs for those projects. This will be given to those projects which show a very like promising future. ठीक है, जो प्रोजेक्ट अच्छे से इंप्लीमेंट हो रहे हैं, ठीक है, उनको और फंड्स चाहिए, तो डिपार्टमेंट ऑफ इकोनॉमिक अफेयर्स को अलॉट किया गया है 44,000 crore रुपीस. ठीक है, इट्स काइंड ऑफ इंसेंटिव टू परफॉर्म वेल ऑन द प्रोजेक्ट एंड डिमॉन्स्ट्रेट गुड प्रोग्रेस. रुपीज 2 lakh crore, ठीक है, हैज बीन एलोकेटेड टू स्टेट एंड ऑटोनोमस बॉडीज फॉर देयर कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर. Now this is very important. States को 2 lakh crore rupees and autonomous bodies को भी 2 lakh crore rupees for their capital expenditure दिया गया है for the creation of capital assets. That is, the government is focusing a lot on to creation of capital assets, both by nudging the state governments and by itself also. ठीक है ना? Government is trying to push a lot for infrastructure development in the country. Understood? Now what is asset monetization? As I told, like DDFC assets, dedicated freight corridor, ठीक है, roads, airports, power transmission line will be put up for monetization. Monetization मतलब roads पे टोल टैक्स लगा के, है ना, और like railways, okay, there was a report by Asian Development Bank that in Asia itself, the value of assets that can be monetized is $26 trillion. That is $26 trillion. And what is our goal? Our goal is $5 trillion economy. तो एशियन डेवलपमेंट बैंक की रिपोर्ट ये है कि ओनली इन एशिया द एसेट्स दैट कैन बी मोनेटाइज्ड is the value are to the tune of $26 trillion, that is from 2016 to 2030, that is 2016 से 2030 तक के बीच में $1.16 ट्रिलियन पर ईयर का एसेट मोनेटाइजेशन का फिजिबिलिटी एशिया में ही है. दैट इज गवर्नमेंट इज ट्राइंग टू यूज दैट कैपेबिलिटी ऑफ एसेट्स इन ब्राउनफील्ड प्रोजेक्ट्स. ब्राउनफील्ड मतलब जो प्रोजेक्ट्स ऑलरेडी हो चुके हैं, लाइक एयरपोर्ट्स जो बन चुके हैं उनको मोनेटाइज करने की. मोनेटाइज कैसे कर सकते हैं? एयरपोर्ट्स पे एयरपोर्ट्स का जो एरिया है दैट कैन बी ग्रांटेड मोर टू द प्राइवेट बॉडीज टू डेवलप इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर ऑन दैट, लाइक लाउंजेस एंड शॉप्स एंड ऑल, एंड देन गवर्नमेंट कैन अर्न अ रेंट फ्रॉम दैट. ठीक है. For example, the government has now transferred 5 roads worth rupees 5,000 crore to NHAI InvIT. What is InvIT? InvIT is Infrastructure Investment Trust. ठीक है. It is a kind of alternative investment fund regulated by SEBI. ठीक है. Alternative investment fund are those funds which are not mutual fund, or those are not basically the traditional funds that are in the market. ठीक है. Like stocks और debentures से अलग जो हट के funds होते हैं उनको हम alternative investment fund कहते हैं, and these are regulated by Securities and Exchanges Board of India, SEBI. तो NHAI InvIT is nothing but a company. It's a trust, sorry, not a company. ठीक है. It's a trust which tries to pool in money from all the investors and then invests into infrastructure projects. अब इसमें invest ही लोग क्यों करेंगे? इस InvIT में क्यों invest करेगा कोई? Because इसका रिस्क लो है एंड लॉन्ग टर्म इन्वेस्टमेंट बिकॉज प्रोजेक्ट्स 10-15 साल काम करते हैं, उसके बाद ही रिटर्न्स आना शुरू होते हैं, तो रिस्क लो है. ठीक है. दूसरा चीज क्या है? लॉन्ग टर्म इन्वेस्टमेंट. इफ समवन इज सीकिंग टू इन्वेस्ट फॉर लाइक 30 years, ठीक है, तो people will try to put their money in NHAI InvIT. Similarly, there is a PGCIL InvIT, Power Grid Corporation of India Limited InvIT. InvIT is called Infrastructure Investment Trust. तो 5,000 crore वर्थ का रोड ट्रांसफर कर दिया गया है किसको? NHAI InvIT को. एंड NHAI InvIT will try to monetize what? These roads by obviously using toll taxes and all. ठीक है. Similarly, power transmission infrastructure has been also worth rupees 7,000 crore has been transferred to Power Grid Corporation of India Limited InvIT that will try to monetize on these power transmission assets. ठीक है. Another very important thing that has happened is production linked incentive scheme. ठीक है. Production linked incentive scheme was launched in March 2020 to increase the production of basic. It was first time for the first time it was launched for 3 sectors. ठीक है. मोबाइल मैन्युफैक्चरिंग, क्रिटिकल की स्टार्टिंग मटेरियल्स यानी ड्रग APIs, एक्टिव फार्मास्यूटिकल इंग्रेडिएंट्स कहते हैं API. APIs के लिए इंडिया वाज कंप्लीटली डिपेंडेंट अपॉन चाइना. एक्टिव फार्मास्यूटिकल इंग्रेडिएंट्स क्या होते हैं? जो भी फार्मास्यूटिकल इंग्रेडिएंट्स दैट जिससे ड्रग्स बनता है या कोई भी दवाई बनती है, उस दवाई का जो इंपॉर्टेंट इंग्रेडिएंट है दैट कम्स फ्रॉम चाइना. Although India is the dispensary of the world, still we are heavily dependent upon China for the import of active pharmaceutical ingredients. ठीक है. तो गवर्नमेंट ने डोमेस्टिक मैन्युफैक्चरिंग को और मेक इन इंडिया को प्रमोट करने के लिए क्या किया कि प्रोडक्शन लिंक्ड इंसेंटिव स्कीम इशू किया. दैट इज if some company is going to manufacture mobile API and medical devices in India itself, अगर वो इंडिया में मैन्युफैक्चर कर रहे हैं, ठीक है, तो इंडियन गवर्नमेंट उनको प्रोडक्शन के वॉल्यूम पे, लाइक इफ फॉर एग्जांपल इफ यू क्रिएट 4,000 मोबाइल फोन्स, है ना, तो वी विल गिव एन इंसेंटिव ऑफ 4% to 6% प्रोडक्शन ऑन द प्रोडक्ट कॉस्ट ऑफ प्रोडक्शन. ठीक है. फॉर एग्जांपल अगर एक फोन का कॉस्ट ऑफ प्रोडक्शन 15,000 रुपीज है, तो द गवर्नमेंट विल गिव यू 15 into 4/100 पर यूनिट आपको 600 रुपीज का गवर्नमेंट इंसेंटिव देगी. गवर्नमेंट विल पे यू रुपीज 600. ठीक है, ओके, for every unit of the phone you produce, but at least you have to produce at least 4000 units of the phone. So that is kind of, I'm trying to demonstrate it, but this is not the real life example. Yes, the interest has been around 4 to 6%, this is true, but it is a production linked incentive scheme. So it was launched in March 2020. ठीक है, to promote domestic manufacturing. ठीक है, again in November 2020 it was extended to what, 10 more sectors. ठीक है, 10 more sectors, and that were advanced chemistry cell battery. ठीक है, lithium ion batteries basically, electronic and technology projects, you can look at these things. ठीक है, अब इन 10 चैंपियन सेक्टर्स में इंडिया को डोमेस्टिक मैन्युफैक्चरिंग हब की तरह गवर्नमेंट प्रोजेक्ट करना चाहती है या डेवलप करना चाहती है. फॉर दैट गवर्नमेंट हैज ट्राइड टू इंसेंटिवाइज द प्रोडक्शन ऑफ दीज यूनिट्स, दीज थिंग्स इन इंडिया इटसेल्फ. ठीक है, उसके लिए प्रोडक्शन लिंक्ड इंसेंटिव स्कीम ऑफर किया था, एंड टोटल कॉस्ट वाज 1,45,980 crores, अराउंड 1,46,000 crores. Now government has committed 1,97,000 crores to this scheme over a period of 5 years. Understood? $1,97,000 crore. Another important point is mega investment textile park Mitra for textile. Bangladesh is a very growing Bangladesh is a growing champion in the sector of textile production. Around 70% of Bangladesh's GDP comes from textile sector. Similarly, India has a very high competitive edge in textile sector, but due to lack of integrated platforms and lack of integrated policies, the textile sector in India has been lacking. ठीक है, तो to develop India as a textile hub, now mega investment textile parks will be 7 new textile parks will be created. Okay. Another important thing is FDI limit in insurance sector has been now increased. This is very important. Whenever there is a question, there is a point about FDI, please pay a lot of attention to it and remember it, because exams में आता है. FDI limit in insurance sector has been increased from 49% to 74%, with the allowing foreign ownership also. Foreign ownership भी insurance companies में allow कर दिया है. Now पहले 49% ही था, अब 49% मतलब अगर आप किसी कंपनी में 49% ही इन्वेस्ट कर सकते हो तो यू कैन नॉट बी द ओनर ऑफ द कंपनी. Why? Because at least you have to have at least 51% of the shares to become the owner. But now ownership in license insurance sector has been also allowed, but there are specific caveats, and that are 50% of the directors should be independent directors. ठीक है, इंडिपेंडेंट डायरेक्टर्स मैंने पिछले लेक्चर में भी समझाया था कि इंडिपेंडेंट डायरेक्टर्स वो डायरेक्टर्स होते हैं जिनका उस कंपनी में कोई स्टेक ना हो. ठीक है, कोटक महिंद्रा कमेटी ऑन कॉर्पोरेट गवर्नेंस, वो पढ़ लीजिएगा, आपको वहां से समझ में आ जाएगा. सिमिलरली नेशनल इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर पाइपलाइन, it has been announced in December 2019, okay, to be completed by 2025, as I told in the previous slide. Was launched with 6,835 projects. 6,835 infrastructure projects were identified, and they were allocated 111 lakh crore. That has now been extended to 7,400 projects. ठीक है, now पहले 6,835 प्रोजेक्ट्स थे, अब 7,400 प्रोजेक्ट्स के अराउंड वो एक्सटेंड कर दिया गया है नेशनल इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर पाइपलाइन को. Another important point is around 217 projects worth 1.1 lakh crore has been completed under NIP. Fine, this is the latest development. अगर इस रेट पे चलता रहा तो it will take 10 years to complete this whole. Now NIP, as I told कि सेंटर, स्टेट्स और प्राइवेट कॉर्पोरेशंस तीनों मिला के फंडिंग कर रहे हैं, ठीक है। तो सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट 40%, सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट 39%, स्टेट गवर्नमेंट 40% एंड प्राइवेट सेक्टर को 21% का फंडिंग है। दिस इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट from prelims point of view. This topic is very important. NIP, National Infrastructure Pipeline, National Monetization Pipeline की details अभी आई नहीं है. Whenever the details come, please go through it. ठीक है? To implement this creation, okay, the government has said that to implement this National Infrastructure Pipeline, government will try to do three things. The first is creation of institutional structure. Institutional structure means ऐसे इंस्टीट्यूशंस बनाओ जहां पे इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर को प्रमोट किया जाए. फॉर एग्जांपल प्लग एंड प्ले, ऐसा इंस्टीट्यूशनल स्ट्रक्चर दैट प्रमोट्स इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चरल डेवलपमेंट. ठीक है. द सेकंड इज मोनेटाइजेशन ऑफ एसेट्स, एज आई टोल्ड, एसेट मोनेटाइजेशन. ठीक है. एंड एक्सपेंडिचर एंड आस्किंग द सेंट्रल एंड स्टेट, बेसिकली स्टेट गवर्नमेंट्स को नज करना सो दैट दे ऑल्सो इंक्रीज देयर व्हाट कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर. ठीक है. तो स्टेट गवर्नमेंट्स का कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर को बढ़ाने के लिए उनको परस्यू करना. ठीक है. तो दीज आर द थ्री थिंग्स दैट हैज बीन मेंशन्ड इन द बजट. दिस इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट फ्रॉम प्रिलिम्स पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू. Another important announcements under this infrastructure was highway sector. Ministry of Road Transport has got 1.18 lakh crore. ठीक है. Of this 1.08 lakh crore is for capital asset creation. This is huge. Only 10,000 crore, ठीक है, has been allocated for what? Only 10,000 crore has been allocated for the revenue expenditure. The all other amount is going for capital asset creation. That is, again, we can see that the government is focusing a lot on creating capital assets. ठीक है. Tamil Nadu will get, okay, this you can go through. This is not important. This one is very important for startups and companies. Startups and companies के लिए definition of small companies to be revised. ठीक है. पहले क्या था, Companies Act 2013 में amendment करके जो small companies की definition थी उसका दो criteria था, या तो turnover या तो paid up capital. Paid up capital earlier was 50 lakh at least minimum. जो small companies का definition था उसके लिए paid up capital होना चाहिए minimum 50 lakh, या turnover होना चाहिए 2 crore का. Now it has been extended from 2 crore to 20 crore. The turnover limit जो है वो 2 crore से 20 crore हो गई, और जो paid up capital है that has been increased 4-fold from 50 lakh to 2 crores. ठीक है. एक तो paid up capital, fine. Now 1% companies can now be, okay, media has falsely reported that the budget has given the chance of incorporating 1% companies for the first time. That is not the case. ठीक है. Actually 1% companies are mentioned in Companies Act 2013, section 26 mentions 1% company. ठीक है. But there was a limit that 1% company cannot be converted into what? Into other company. उसके ऊपर limits थे. That limit has been set off. ठीक है. That limit has been set off. ठीक है. Section 2, subsection 62 stated that 1% company can be formed. ठीक है. But that person should be a active resident of India. ठीक है. पहला लिमिटेशन तो ये था, रेसिडेंसी पे था. दूसरा लिमिटेशन था कि एटलीस्ट द मिनिमम पेड अप कैपिटल शुड बी ₹1 lakh. नाउ दैट हैज बीन वेव्ड ऑफ. देयर इज नो मिनिमम पेड अप कैपिटल लिमिट, एंड ऑल्सो द रेसिडेंसी जो क्राइटेरिया था दैट हैज ऑल्सो बीन रिलैक्स्ड फ्रॉम 180 days to 120 days. ठीक है. नाउ एन NRI कैन ऑल्सो सेट अप 1% कंपनी. 1% companies were also, prior to this also they were there. ठीक है. That were mentioned in Companies Act 2013. बट मिनिमम पेड अप कैपिटल रिक्वायरमेंट कितना था, 1 लाख रुपीज होना चाहिए, अब वो हटा दिया गया है, अब 1 रुपीज से भी यू कैन स्टार्ट अ कंपनी, 1 पर्सन कंपनी. The second important consideration was कि the person who is going to open a 1 person company should be resident in India for at least 180 days. But that has also been removed now and it has been made 120 days. ठीक है, that will make sorry that will make NRIs eligible for 1 person for opening the 1 person companies. This is to bring investment in India, ठीक है, and to promote startups. Around 2 lakh, ठीक है, 2 lakh companies, smaller companies are going to benefit from that. ठीक है. अच्छा, इसका बेनिफिट क्या हुआ कि 50 लाख से 2 करोड़ कर दिया और 22 करोड़ से 20 करोड़, बिकॉज स्मॉलर कंपनीज गेट अ लॉट ऑफ टैक्स बेनिफिट्स. ठीक है, स्मॉल कंपनीज गेट अ लॉट ऑफ टैक्स बेनिफिट्स, टैक्स हॉलीडेज भी मिलता है. तो नाउ द नंबर ऑफ कंपनीज दैट कैन गेट टैक्स बेनिफिट हैज इंक्रीज सब्सटेंशियली. ठीक है. नाउ a very controversial but important topic is disinvestment. Disinvestment is overseen by DIPAM, Department of Public Asset Management. ठीक है. Estimated proceeds from the disinvestment is around 1,75,000 crore. This is the budget estimate. ठीक है ना, for financial year of 21-22. ठीक है. IPO of LIC will be issued there this year. Sorry, LIC Life Insurance Corporation, उसका IPO issue हुआ. That is, this company is going to be listed on stock market. 2 public sector banks, that is, what are the implications of this? When a company gets listed on the stock market, its shareholding goes to individuals. That is, private individuals can now be the shareholders of the company. What the government is trying to do is to shed off its own shares in the company and allow other people to hold the shares of the company. ठीक है. And the government has now formulated what a disinvestment policy also, and that disinvestment policy states that the government will maintain its bare minimum presence in the 4 strategic sectors. Bare minimum presence in the 4 strategic sectors, that are atomic energy, space and defense, transport and telecommunication, power, petroleum, coal and other minerals, and banking, insurance and financial service. And all other PSUs, ठीक है, जो इन चारों सेक्टर से बाहर हैं, उन सबको या तो क्लोज किया जाएगा या तो डिसइन्वेस्ट यानी प्राइवेटाइज किया जाएगा. द गवर्नमेंट इज वेरी क्लियर ऑन दिस डिसइन्वेस्टमेंट. नाउ जो डिसइन्वेस्टमेंट पे हल्ला बल्ला था कि द गवर्नमेंट इज सेलिंग एवरीथिंग, द गवर्नमेंट हैज कम like in open, yes, we are going to sell everything if that does not lie under the 4 headings. ठीक है. तो all other companies are going to be either sold or they are going to be closed. ठीक है. तो this one is very important. Disinvestment policy बजट के लास्ट में annex 3 में दिया हुआ है. That is very important. Please go through this. Another important topic from the consideration for our consideration is agriculture. Micro Irrigation Development Fund has been augmented with rupees 5,000 crore and now it stands at rupees 10,000 crore. Micro Irrigation Development Fund was started under PMKSY, Pradhan Mantri Kisan Sinchai Yojana, in 2015. ठीक है. In 2015 this was started and its initial corpus was rupees 5,000 crore. ठीक है. Okay, now it has been, now another 5,000 crore rupees has been added to it and it stands at rupees 10,000 crore. MIDF is a fund under NABARD. ठीक है. 1,000 more mandis will be integrated with ENAM. Okay, again, Agriculture Investment and Development Fund would be made available to mandis to improve their infrastructure. ठीक है. Agriculture Investment Fund will be made available to mandis, ठीक है, to improve their own infrastructure. This is in the view of the recent protests. ठीक है, कि there has been, like, the protest is on the view that the government is going to dismantle mandis, the government has said that no AIDF funds will be available for the mandis to upgrade themselves now. The government is actually showing an intent to strengthen the mandis rather than dismantling them. NREGS, MG Narega, that is National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme, has been allocated rupees 73,000 crore. Although there was not a single mention of Manrega in Honorable Finance Minister's speech, but it has been allocated 73,000 crore rupees, which is higher by 18% of the budget estimate of 2021, but it is lower than the revised estimates of 2021. ठीक है, तो what are the certain reasons? ठीक है, important चीज ये है कि due to the coronavirus lockdown that happened in the country, a lot of people went back to their villages. ठीक है, migration, reverse migration took place and a lot of workers went back to their villages. Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme was the safety net for them. ठीक है, MG Narega has now achieved the highest ever disbursement of funds, and the man hours that has been achieved is the highest till now under Manrega. But now government expects that the lockdown has ended and the industries are now running, so the economy will be back on track. In that anticipation, the government is trying to lower the, since it is higher by 18% than the previous budget estimate, ठीक है, but it is lower than the revised estimate of actual जो मनरेगा पे खर्च हुआ लास्ट ईयर उससे कम है 73,000 करोड़, बट जो एस्टिमेटेड बजट था 2020 का उससे ज्यादा है बाई 18%. एक्चुअल खर्चे इसलिए ज्यादा हो गए क्योंकि बहुत सारे लोग रिवर्स माइग्रेशन की वजह से अपने गांव में चले गए एंड मनरेगा वाज अ सेफ्टी नेट. But government now sees that the condition is going to improve and people will be back to the industries, so the Manrega allocations need not be very high. Now department, okay, Ministry of Agriculture has two departments. The first is Department of Agricultural Research and Education, and the second is Department of Agricultural Cooperation and Farmer Welfare. So Department of Agricultural Cooperation Farmer Welfare has been allotted less to the tune of 10,000 crore rupees as compared to the previous allocation. Previous allocation was 75,000 crore rupees. This department was allocated 75,000 crore rupees. ठीक है, in the previous budget, but now this year it has been allocated 65,000 crore rupees. इसके पीछे क्या वजह है? सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट बात यह है कि this allocation was done for प्रधानमंत्री किसान सम्मान निधि योजना. ठीक है, PM Kisan is a scheme under which 6,000 rupees is transferred to the eligible farmer families. ठीक है, in 3 installments, 2,000 rupees की installment पे भेजे जाते हैं 6,000 rupees. But the disbursement only took last year 75,000 crore rupees were allocated for Pradhan Mantri Kisan, but only 65,000 was disbursed. ठीक है, तो जो जितना disbursed हुआ last year, that has been made the allocation for this year. Understood? Now Department of Agricultural Research and Education, है ना, this is the second department in Ministry of Agriculture that has been allocated a marginal improvement of 300 crore rupees. Previous year के allocation से 300 crores का ज़्यादा allocation है इस साल, बहुत ही marginal है. People are criticizing it also. Why? Because 1% of expenditure of GDP on agricultural research amounts to 10%, the return of 10%, not of GDP but of the investment. यानी अगर आप 1 रुपए एग्रीकल्चरल रिसर्च में इन्वेस्ट करते हैं तो आपका रिटर्न जो होता है उससे 10 रुपीज के इक्विवेलेंट होता है. तो एग्रीकल्चरल, और देयर इज अ कंपनी कॉल्ड बायर, BAYER, Bayer. It's a private company like Monsanto. That is also a company in the field of biotechnology. And Bayer is basically in the field of agricultural research, again biotechnology and all. So that company spends 20,000 crore rupees annually in agricultural research. A private company spends rupees 20,000 crore annually, and this is what India spends 8,368 crore rupees. Understood? This whole country invests 8,368 crore rupees in agricultural research, whereas Bayer invests rupees 20,000 crore annually. And that is one of the main reason कि India में agricultural extension services and agricultural research is lagging a lot. Again, this year भी agricultural research को बहुत ज़्यादा funds allocate नहीं हुए. Now this is very important, fertilizer subsidy. The revised estimate for fertilizer subsidy was, this is again what I'm talking about is revised estimate. ठीक है, पहले तो 2020-21 के बजट, लास्ट ईयर का जो बजट था उसमें पहले बजटरी एस्टिमेट आया होगा फर्टिलाइजर सब्सिडी के लिए, दैट वाज 71,309 करोड़. बट रिवाइज्ड एस्टिमेट क्या है? एक्चुअल खर्चे. रिवाइज्ड एस्टिमेट शो करता है एक्चुअल एक्सपेंडिचर दैट हैज बीन इनकर्ड, दैट इज 1,33,947 करोड़, ऑलमोस्ट डबल है ना, 71 का डबल 142, almost double. Why? What government has done is a very bold step in the case of fertilizer subsidy, because there were a huge arrears on this fertilizer industry by the government. ठीक है, गवर्नमेंट का बहुत सारा एरियर था ये फर्टिलाइजर इंडस्ट्री की कंपनीज पे. तो नाउ व्हाट गवर्नमेंट डिड वाज, इन वन गो गवर्नमेंट पेड ऑल द एरियर्स, ड्यू टू व्हिच द एक्सपेक्टेड एक्सपेंडिचर that was to happen has gone very high to the tune of 1,33,947 crore rupees. ठीक है, तो now the fertilizer companies have got their money back, they can start fresh. ठीक है, so this is a very good thing. This has cleared up all the previous dues of the fertilizer industry. Now, due to the protests and all these things, the reforms in the agriculture sector has again taken a back seat. ठीक है, back seat कैसे? MRP ऑफ यूरिया. MRP, एक यूरिया बैग जो मार्केट में मिलता है, इसका MRP लास्ट टाइम रिवाइज हुआ था 2010 में. नाउ 10 years हैज पास्ड एंड गवर्नमेंट हैज नॉट रिवाइज्ड द MRP, यानी जिस रेट पे फार्मर्स परचेज कर सकते हैं. बट द कॉस्ट ऑफ प्रोडक्शन इज डेफिनेटली गॉन हायर. ठीक है, इन्फ्लेशन को भी एडजस्ट करना चाहिए, बट MRP हैज स्टिल नॉट बीन ऑल्टर्ड because of the lack of the political headroom, because of the protests and all these things. The government is not having that much of political headroom, ठीक है, to make a lot of maneuver. But what government did was, this is not in the budget, but last year, until recently, until August, basically August 2020, since the government cannot raise the MRP of the urea bag because of the political issues या political cost that the party will have to bear या the government will have to bear. ठीक है, तो what government did was, there was up to August 2020 there was no denial policy, that is any farmer can buy any amount of urea or any amount of other fertilizers. Up to August 2020 there was the no denial policy was followed. After that what happened was, point of sale machines were given to the people who were selling this urea. ठीक है, now anyone can, and a limit of 100 bags was imposed per transaction, but this limit was imposed on every transaction, but there was no mention of limits of transaction in a month. ठीक है, तो पहले क्या था, आप एक ही दिन में 1000 बोरी भी खरीद सकते हो, 1000 बैग्स भी खरीद सकते थे यूरिया के. उसके बाद क्या हुआ, दैट वाज कॉल्ड नो डिनायल पॉलिसी. उसके बाद क्या हुआ, 100 बैग्स पर ट्रांजैक्शन का लिमिट लगा दिया गवर्नमेंट ने, बट देयर वाज नो लिमिट ऑन हाउ मेनी ट्रांजैक्शंस यू कैन मेक विद इन अ मंथ. तो अगर जिसको ज्यादा खरीदना था, और ये हो क्यों रहा था, बहुत सारा यूरिया डाइवर्जन होता है. 2016 का अगर आप इकोनॉमिक सर्वे पढ़ेंगे, फर्टिलाइजर पे है, एक चैप्टर है पूरा उसमें, तो यू विल अंडरस्टैंड कि देयर अ लॉट ऑफ यूरिया इज डाइवर्टेड टू अदर इंडस्ट्रीज एंड दिस यूरिया इज सब्सिडाइज्ड यूरिया. ठीक है, फार्मर जो गवर्नमेंट पेज सब्सिडी ऑन दिस यूरिया बैग्स टू द प्रोडक्ट प्रोड्यूसिंग कंपनीज, है ना, एंड दीज कंपनीज, ठीक है, लाइक टोबैको इंडस्ट्री में डाइवर्ट होता है यूरिया. ठीक है, और बहुत सारी मैन्युफैक्चरिंग इंडस्ट्रीज में भी डाइवर्ट होता है यूरिया. तो दीज कंपनीज डाइवर्टेड दिस यूरिया दैट वाज सब्सिडाइज्ड एंड परचेज्ड इट. ठीक है, So now government implemented 100 bags per transaction, but no transaction limit was imposed. Later, what happened? Number of transactions, what happened was from January 15, 2021, last month, government has imposed an upper limit of 50 bags per month. One cannot purchase more than 50 bags a month. Okay? So since the government has not increased what the volume of the price of the MRP of the urea, but it has put a limit on what the amount of urea one can purchase. Okay? So that is a positive step. Now agriculture से हम कहाँ पे आ गए? Fiscal policy. This is another very important and interesting as well. ठीक है कि there has been a lot of fiscal decisions that have taken place. Now this, as I was telling you, कि the gap between revenue deficit and fiscal deficit should be high. But in India, 7.5% revenue deficit in 2020 last year was 7.5%. Prior to that 3.3%. Prior to that 2.24%, 2.4%. But this gap is not very high. Oh, sorry. What is the issue? That we have a high revenue deficit. And high revenue deficit is due to higher interest payments. Okay? Due to which fiscal deficit is also pushed high. ठीक है, जितना revenue deficit high होगा, fiscal deficit उसका proportion में उतना ही high होगा. Understood? तो the fiscal deficit is widening. Last year का जो budget estimate था, budget estimate, again budget estimate is what? The estimated expenditure, the estimate that was prepared during the budget formation. For the last year, the budget estimate was 3.5%. Okay? But the last year, fiscal deficit was around 9.5%. Okay? What explains this very high fiscal deficit? Okay, for fiscal year of 2020, for fiscal year of 2020-21, budget estimate was 3.5%. But actual fiscal deficit was budget estimate for fiscal deficit. Okay, we are dealing with fiscal deficit. Okay. But this actually shot up to 9.5%, our fiscal deficit. Okay? What explains this high value? The first is obviously due to COVID, government has spent a lot of resources. Okay? जिसकी वजह से our deficit has shot up. Okay? Another important point this year was bringing transparency in accounting, government accounts. Transparency in government accounts. कैसे? Prior to this, what government did was, government took loans from NSSF, National Small Saving Fund. What did government do was, National Small Savings Fund. अब NSSF में क्या क्या आता है? Postal deposits, ठीक है? Postal deposits, Social Security deposits, ठीक है? Postal deposits, Social Security deposit, short-term deposits, ठीक है? Social Security deposits में EPF for example, EPF, PPF, Postal deposits में किसान विकास पत्र, ठीक है? And other short-term deposits. अब National Small Saving Fund was created so that these deposits can be, this NSSF is under Public Accounts of India. Okay, this is very important. You can write it down somewhere. NSSF is under Public Accounts of India. Okay. Now all these deposits were created so that people can have people can save their money. Okay. And for like Provident Fund and Kisan Vikas Pats and all this. But what government was doing up till last year was Government was taking huge loans from NSSF to fund its fiscal deficit. Again, चूंकि लोन NSSF ने दिया, तो that will not be directly reflected in the balance sheet of government. The government was successful in keeping the fiscal deficit low. But NSSF, ठीक है, similarly what happened was, now these loans were not directly taken from NSSF. Loans were taken from FCI. ठीक है, अब FCI के पास अपना रेवेन्यू जनरेशन का तो कोई सोर्स नहीं है. क्यों? क्योंकि FCI हायर कॉस्ट पे परचेज करता है और लोअर कॉस्ट पे सेल करता है. ठीक है, और गवर्नमेंट इज द ओनली सोर्स ऑफ फंड फॉर FCI. गवर्नमेंट एक्चुअली FCI बॉट फ्रॉम NSSF. ठीक है, and FCI bought from NSSF and that money was given to whom? Government to fund its fiscal deficit. So what happened was this money never showed up into the fiscal deficit or revenue expenditure of the government, due to which the fiscal deficit of government was around 3 to 3.5%. ठीक है, but this loan was to the tune of like 2 lakh crore rupees. ठीक है, अगर इसको इंक्लूड कर लेती गवर्नमेंट फिस्कल डेफिसिट में तो आराम से 2% ऑफ इंक्रीज हो जाता. तो ये 3 से क्या पहुंच जाता, हाउ मच, 5 to 6%. दैट मीन्स दिस वॉज एन अकाउंटिंग, दिस वॉज लैक ऑफ ट्रांसपेरेंसी इन टू द गवर्नमेंट अकाउंट्स. वट गवर्नमेंट नेवर डिस्क्लोज्ड इट कि हम NSSF FCI से पैसे लेके अपना फिस्कल डेफिसिट को फंड कर रहे हैं. तो बट लास्ट ईयर finance minister announced that we will be explaining to the country as to how we are funding the budget, and now this year the budget document contains a page and that page has an explanation कि कौन सी कितने corporations जो हैं FCI जैसे इस corporation ने NSSF से कितनी borrowing की है. And now all this borrowing that was on the balance sheet of FCI has been taken over by the government balance sheet. ठीक है, अब अराउंड 3 लाख करोड़ रुपीस का लोन FCI का के पास था NSSF का. दैट लोन हैज बीन क्लियर्ड फॉर FCI एंड दैट लोन हैज बीन ब्रॉट इनटू द बैलेंस शीट ऑफ द गवर्नमेंट. दिस इंक्रीज्ड लोन है ना हैज नाउ पुश्ड द फिस्कल डेफिसिट ऑफ द कंट्री टू द हायर लेवल. अंडरस्टूड. So that is why one of the prime reason is obviously COVID spending has been the reason of higher deficit. But if this FCI balance sheet clearing was not done by the government, the fiscal deficit for last year would have been around 6 to 6.5%. Understood? But it is 9.5%. Now FRBM Act mandates that the fiscal deficit of the government should be around 3 to 3.5%. और उसको जीरो करने का, रेवेन्यू डेफिसिट को भी तो जीरो करने का प्रोविजन है. ठीक है, रेवेन्यू डेफिसिट शुड बी ब्रॉट टू जीरो लेवल. ठीक है, बट नाउ द गवर्नमेंट हैज रीड्रॉन द फिस्कल कंसोलिडेशन रोड मैप, और नाउ द गवर्नमेंट हैज अमेंडेड द FRBM Act and now they have given themselves a time of 2026 to bring down the fiscal deficit to 4.5% by 2026. 5 years का टाइम गवर्नमेंट ने बाई कर लिया अपने लिए, है ना, और दैट वाज ब्रॉट बाय अमेंडमेंट टू FRBM Act. ठीक है, the FD for fiscal deficit for 2020 has been revised upwards. Okay, bringing all the off budgetary resources of the balance sheet of FCI, that is what I explained. Now the main components of deficit financing is going to be done through, okay, what is deficit financing? Deficit financing is when our expenditures are higher than our earning. ठीक है, when our expenditures are higher than our earning, so what we do is we borrow. ठीक है, we borrow from other people so that our expenditures can be met. So government also does the same thing. when the government expenditures are greater than its earning, तो government goes into the market and borrows. तो we will be observing कि what has been the trend कि government अपने fiscal deficit को finance कैसे कर रही है, and what are the provisions that government is using. The first is market borrowings, the second is disinvestment. Open market में जाके borrow कर रही है government securities के against. The second is disinvestment. Disinvestment proceeds from public sector units and receipts from the indirect taxes including import duties and cess. ठीक है. Net borrowings are projected to fall back to 9.7 lakh crore from current 12.73 lakh crore. For the previous fiscal year, the fiscal deficit has been around 9.5% and the borrowing has been around 12.73 lakh crore rupees. For the next year, the projected fiscal deficit is around 6.8%. ठीक है. For 2021-22, the fiscal deficit is going to be around 8%, and in actual numbers, the borrowing is going to be around 9.67 lakh crore rupees. ठीक है. The capital expenditure is expected to rise from 4.39 lakh crore to, okay, that is we studied in capital part. ठीक है. So we'll be seeing कि what are the sources of deficit financing. And 2019, 2021, this is revised estimate, this is budget estimate. Okay, budget estimate में ये था कि यहाँ पे रहेगा, sorry, budgetary estimate में ये था कि इतनी market borrowing करनी पड़ेगी, but revised estimate में हमारा this shot up to this level because of excessive spending, obviously. Now this is securities against small savings. As I told you, NSSF से borrowing जो के when government borrows from NSSF, that is called securities against small savings. ठीक है. This is also shot up. State provident funds, okay, again provident fund से अगर borrow कर रहा है, provident fund is again under public account of India. ठीक है. तो ये वहां पे जो पैसे पड़े हैं, गवर्नमेंट अगर वहां के पैसे निकाल के और अपने डेफिसिट को फाइनेंस करने में यूज कर रही है. ठीक है. अदर रिसीट्स, एक्सटर्नल डेट हैज बीन कंसिस्टेंटली लो. इंडिया का एक्सटर्नल डेट इज अराउंड 43,000 crore rupees. Okay, and that is very low, substantially low. ठीक है. This is drawdown on cash balance. Drawdown on cash balance का मतलब है कि सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट मेंटेन्स an account with RBI, cash account basically. ठीक है. And when government draws money from that account that it holds with RBI, that is called drawdown from cash balance. Now you can see how it has been going. ठीक है. This is I leave this to you to study. Fiscal deficit contribution from NSSF, this is not important. Wait. Now that was expenditure side. This is revenue side. Gross tax revenue are expected to rise by 16.7% because of the implementation of IT-80, है ना, income tax appellate tribunal, है ना, and faceless tax assessment. ठीक है. Now the tax base has dramatically improved from around 3.8 crore people in 2014 to 6.8 crore people in 2020. There has been a dramatic rise in the tax base of the country. That is due to various tax amendments and tax laws the government has brought. ठीक है. तो government expects that the tax base has increased, due to which 16.7% of gross tax revenue will increase. ठीक है. Projected increase in 22% in direct taxes and around 30,000 crore from agri-infra and development cess. Government has also imposed in this budget agricultural infrastructure and development cess. तो उससे भी 30,000 crore rupees government earn करने का expect कर रही है. Nominal GDP growth rate projected for 2020 is around 14.4%, as against 15.4%. Economic survey projected 15.4% nominal growth rate, but economics budget has been conservative with the figures and it has projected 14.4% of GDP growth rate, nominal GDP growth rate. ठीक है. Nominal GDP and real GDP में difference जो होगा वो inflation represent करता है. If inflation is going to be around 3 to 3.5%, तो real GDP will be around 11%. ठीक है, that is the GDP growth of country will be around 10 to 11%. That is real GDP, whereas the nominal GDP is going to be around 14.4%. The budget says that, but economic survey projects it to be 15.4%. ठीक है, again most of the 15th Finance Commission recommendations have been accepted. 15th Finance Commission was Finance Commission lays its report to the president, ठीक है, and then central government lays a report in the parliament as to the action taken on the report. ठीक है, कि मतलब if it has, what recommendation has the government accepted, and if it has not accepted, what are the possible reasons for that. So the recommendations of, most of the recommendations of 15th Finance Commission, 15th Finance Commission was chaired by N.K. Singh. ठीक है, it has recommended that 41% of, okay, 14th Finance Commission recommended that 42% of the tax proceeds of the union pool should be given to the states. Now 15th Finance Commission recommended that 41% instead of 42% should be given to the states, and the 1% shall be reserved by central government for investment in the newly created Union Territory of J&K. Okay, a non-lapsable fund to be created in public accounts of India for defense. Okay, defense modernization के लिए a non-lapsable fund has to be created, and also a detailed exercise for rationalization and bringing down of the centrally sponsored schemes. ठीक है, centrally sponsored schemes put a pressure on the states. ठीक है, तो the 15th Finance Commission has basically recommended that central government reduce the number of centrally sponsored scheme and devolve more money to the states so that they can have a discretionary power to take or make policies and implement schemes as according to their own needs. ठीक है, net borrowing ceiling of state at 4% of GSDP, gross state domestic product, for financial year of 2021-22. ठीक है, net borrowing. Okay, the states cannot borrow without the permission of central government if the central government has an outstanding loan on the states. ठीक है, and most of the all states have outstanding loan of the union government. So obviously union government can impose conditions on what, the borrowing of the state governments. So 14th Finance Commission recommended that the net borrowing limit for states should be at around 4% of the GSDP. Another important point about the borrowing of state governments is the state governments cannot borrow outside the country. Only central government can borrow outside the country. Additional borrowing ceiling of 0.5% of the GSDP will also provided to states. Okay, if states fulfill certain conditions, like condition of one nation, one ration card, if a certain state is implementing that, so that state can be allowed an extra borrowing of 0.5% of the GDP of that state. ठीक है, तो obviously center can impose certain conditions on the borrowing of states if the state is having an outstanding loan of center. ठीक है, these are the 15th Finance Commission recommendations that have been accepted by the government. Okay, the total transfer to states and UTs. Okay, you can see this has been consistently increasing from 2016-17, 2016 to 2019, but 19-20 में यहाँ पे कम है, and then again revised estimate for 2020 it has increased. So this has not been a consistent increase, but there has been a fall in 19-20. ठीक है, composition of composition of transfers to states and UTs, devolutions, scheme related and other transfers. Scheme related and other transfers will be centrally sponsored schemes, okay, and Finance Commission grants. This has been consistently increasing, okay, and scheme related, this is for like last year and this year, 2019-20, 2021 and 2022. ठीक है, तो you can, this was in the budget document, so I reproduced it here. You can see this is not very important from my point of view. And now the last portion in this whole budget is taxation. ठीक है, part 1 is, we discussed the part 1 of the budget up till now. This is part 2 of the budget speech, that is called taxation. So you can see the net collection of direct taxes. This is the graph of net collection of direct taxes. ठीक है, and GDP at current prices. This curve represents GDP at current prices. Sorry. Okay. This represents, these larger bars represent GDP at current prices, and these smaller ones represent what? Net collection of direct taxes. You can see it has been consistently growing. Okay, but the rate of growth has not been very fast. But the rate of growth of GDP has been faster as compared to this. Okay. So this is direct tax to GDP ratio and direct tax to growth rate. This one is direct tax to GDP ratio. So already, although it has been growing, but this has been growing very fast. Okay. So you can see कि the rate of the rate of the growth of both has been almost constant. ठीक है. तो मतलब GDP is increasing, tax to GDP ratio is also increasing, but still that is not, it is stagnant in the sense कि अगर tax to GDP ratio बढ़ा है तो GDP उसके रेशियो में काफी बढ़ गई, जिसकी वजह से रेशियो जो इन दोनों का है that is almost stagnant. ठीक है. And direct tax growth rate, you can see from here, from 2016 onwards it has improved a lot, but obviously this is due to the coronavirus effect that has plunged down. Now at 2020 the number of income tax return filer witnessed dramatic increase from 6.48 crore to, as I told, 2014 में 3.3 crore income tax file करने वाले लोग थे. 2020 में it was 6.48 crore. ठीक है. The government expects 11,800 crore rupees in net direct tax collections. ठीक है. That is up from 9,500 crore. To ease compliance, this has been very important aspect of taxation. Pensioners with, okay, the pensioners who are above 75 years of age and do not have any income apart from pension and any income apart from interest saving. Like if a person who has retired and who has invested all his money into bank savings and they are earning some income in the form of interest from that saving, so that person will not have to file what? Income tax return. The turnover limit for which a company needs to have its accounts audited to improve the ease of doing business. Earlier, if a company had a turnover of rupees 5 crore, it has to get itself audited. But now the limit has been raised to 10 crore rupees if that it's conditional, if that company is doing 95% of its transaction in digital mode. Okay. Trends in tax receipt, you can go through this. Gross tax receipt, this one. Direct tax, this one, and indirect tax. ठीक है. तो आप 2011 से देख सकते हैं, आपको ये स्टडी करना होता है कि डायरेक्ट टैक्स और इनडायरेक्ट टैक्स का रिलेशनशिप क्या है, प्लस विच इज ग्रोइंग विच इज फॉलिंग, ये आप देख सकते हैं अपने एग्जाम पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से. गो थ्रू दिस इज इन द बजट डॉक्यूमेंट. ठीक है. Now another important announcement has been income tax appellate income tax assessment has been made faceless. ठीक है. तो like पहले income tax officers and the person who is going to pay income tax, ठीक है, they had a face-to-face conversation. Then income tax assessment was done, or the person has to visit the income tax office. A lot of harassment was done on the part of income tax department. ठीक है. To reduce that and to improve the compliance, है ना, इतना सारा रिस्ट्रिक्शन और इतना सारा हैरेसमेंट की वजह से पीपल tried not to file any kind of income tax and they tried to evade it. ठीक है. That also increased the cost of filing income tax. Now faceless assessment of tax has been brought. Similarly, that has actually improved the compliance of people. जब से faceless transaction faceless assessment हो गया है, unless there is a very high complexity in your tax filing, so you don't have to go to the income tax office and file your tax. You can do it online. The assessment will also be done online, and if there is a conflict, you can approach income tax appellate tribunal. Now the government is trying to make income tax appellate tribunal also faceless. Okay, and most of the hearings will be through email, and in case a hearing needs to be done in person, that will be done through a video conferencing. So that will also improve the compliance and bring down the compliance cost of filing the income tax. After the success of Vivad Se Vishwas scheme, Vivad Se Vishwas scheme was brought for legacy income tax disputes. ठीक है? Understood? Now the government is trying to form dispute resolution committees, which will be faceless again. With if anyone is having an income up to rupees 50 lakh or disputed income up to rupees 10 lakh, they can appear, like they can approach dispute resolution committees. Indirect taxes के regarding क्या reforms हुए हैं? Custom duties have been rationalized to correct the inverted duty and overhauling of 400 exemptions. Earlier 400 exemptions that were provided, industry stakeholders के साथ मिलके उनको हटा दिया गया है. यानी exemptions are those कि मतलब you don't have to pay tax on something, that is called exemption. Now 400 exemptions have been removed. To promote domestic manufacturing in the solar sector also, custom duty on solar inverters has been raised from 5% to 20%. Custom duty means the duty that is charged on import of some good or export of some good, that is called customs duty. So to like restrict the importers from importing inverters from outside, the government is trying to, and the inverted duty structure. Inverted duty structure means when the raw material of something is taxed at a higher level as compared to the finished goods. For example, for mobile phones, for example, if PCBs, mobile phones have PCBs, LEDs, screens, ठीक है, तो अगर गवर्नमेंट मोबाइल फोन के ऊपर 5% टैक्स लगा रही है और LCD स्क्रीन या LED स्क्रीन पे 10% टैक्स लगा रही है, तो गवर्नमेंट इज एक्चुअली व्हाट इंसेंटिवाइजिंग ब्रिंगिंग द finished product into country rather than the raw material into the country. ठीक है, तो that is called inverted duty structure. When the raw input of the product is taxed at a higher level, what will people do? People will not try to bring the raw input and produced inside the country. Rather, people will try to bring the finished good from outside and sell it into the country. ठीक है, because एक फोन पे 5% टैक्स लग रहा है और इस फोन की LCD अगर आप बाहर से मंगा रहे हो तो 10% टैक्स लग रहा है. तो why would you bring a LCD and manufacture here? You'll bring the whole phone, right? So that is called inverted duty structure. The government has tried to correct the inverted duty structure. And one important thing that government has done is the government has removed the anti-dumping duty on Chinese steel. ठीक है, तो चाइना से जो स्टील इंपोर्ट हो रहा था उस पे एंटी डंपिंग ड्यूटी गवर्नमेंट ने हटा दी है. That has been done in the view of like increasing the infrastructure investment, क्योंकि बहुत सारा इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर प्रोजेक्ट्स कंट्री में इंप्लीमेंट होने वाला है. तो in the view of that, the government might have done this. ठीक है. Second thing is custom duty on cotton has been increased from 10 to 15%. Again, import of cotton has become costlier. Agri infra and development cess has been imposed. ठीक है, that we discussed. Okay, the last thing, Pradhan Mantri Atmanirbhar Swasth Bharat Yojana, that was mentioned in the like very first slide. It is a centrally sponsored scheme. Okay, centrally sponsored means central and states will have to bear both will have to bear the cost. ठीक है, center and UTs, center and states, and center and UTs and Himalayan states and northeastern states, ऐसा classification होता है. Like center and states के बीच में 60-40, center and northeastern states and Himalayan states के बीच में 90-10. ठीक है, so it will have developed capacities of primary, secondary and tertiary services. It will be in addition to the National Health Mission. What are the key features? Setting up of integrated public health labs. 11 states के ब्लॉक लेवल पे इंटीग्रेटेड पब्लिक हेल्थ लैब्स क्रिएट की जाएंगी. ठीक है, ब्लॉक लेवल पे. एक्सपेंशन ऑफ इंटीग्रेटेड हेल्थ इंफॉर्मेशन पोर्टल टू ऑल स्टेट्स एंड जितने भी इंडिया में पब्लिक हेल्थ ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस हैं, लाइक पब्लिक हेल्थ यूनिट्स हैं, हॉस्पिटल्स हैं, लैब्स हैं, जो भी हैं, उन सबको एक पोर्टल पे लाया जाएगा. ठीक है, एंड वहां पे इंफॉर्मेशन फाइलिंग होगी सो दैट द डिजीज मॉनिटरिंग कैन बी इम्प्रूव्ड. ठीक है, establishing critical care hospital blocks in 602 districts and 12 central institutions. ठीक है, critical care hospitals like for cancer, for heart diseases, for lung diseases, that are critical care. ठीक है, and 12 central institutions in 602 districts and 12 central institutions also. सेंट्रल इंस्टीट्यूशंस लाइक एम्स में और क्रिटिकल केयर हॉस्पिटल्स खोले जाएंगे ऐसे. Operationalization of 17 new public health units and strengthening of 33 existing PHUs. Health units means basically hospitals या medical colleges. At the point of entry, wherever to check like the corona entered India from China, है ना, to check any such kind of entry into the country of a viral disease or a transmittable or communicable disease, 33 एंट्री पॉइंट्स पे इंडिया में जो भी 33 एंट्री पॉइंट्स हैं, सी पोर्ट्स, एयरपोर्ट्स, है ना, 33 तो एयरपोर्ट्स वाले एंट्री पॉइंट्स और सी पोर्ट्स ऐसे ही और लैंड क्रॉसिंग्स भी, वहाँ पे हॉस्पिटल्स खोले जाएंगे जो कि चेक कर सकें, सो दैट लाइक इन द केस ऑफ रिसेंट कोविड क्वारंटीन फैसिलिटी वाज मिसिंग, है ना, तो इन चीज़ों को स्ट्रेंथन करने के लिए एंट्री पॉइंट्स पे 17 न्यू पब्लिक हेल्थ यूनिट्स ओपन किए जाएंगे. ठीक है. And setting up of 4 regional institutes of virology, a regional research platform for WHO Southeast Asia, and 9 biosafety level 3 labs. ठीक है. So this will be the important point aspect of what प्रधानमंत्री आत्मनिर्भर स्वास्थ्य भारत योजना. I hope you understood this. After this you will have to go through the budget document. ठीक है. Now you will be able to understand कि तुम्हें क्या पढ़ना है. Okay, and if you have any queries, questions, और सबसे important चीज़ है कि you will have to go through the key terms that on the like in the very first page, on the very first slide, I gave the key terms कि what is budget estimate, what is revised estimate, what is revenue deficit, what is fiscal deficit, what is primary deficit. Okay, so you'll have to revise, you will have to first go through these terms to understand this document. ठीक है. And from for exam point of view, budget and economic survey से like 5-6 questions आते ही आते हैं. So this is very important. If you have any queries, please drop in the comment section. I shall be more than happy to answer them. That is all for the day. Thank you.